welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a long time, and that's why I love horror movies as a black person. If you're black, you know that life as a black person is knowing that everything is always connected, so even my interests and hobbies and subculture are viewed through a political and critical lens. If you know me, either you love that or hate that about me. But I'm not changing. Growing up in a devout Pentecostal household, I was taught to fear the devil and sin. Being soaked and cloaked in sin was my biggest nightmare, and I always tried to be good to avoid it. Back then, I didn't need horror movies to scare me, when my own nightmares about Satan dragging me to hell kept me up at night. I was also hyperlexic as a kid, and I loved reading, so I knew way too early what happened in Revelations. Honestly, I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. But despite this, I was always fascinated by horror. Even as a child, I found refuge in the monsters and demons that came to life in my imagination. From the stories told in the Bible, and then in the forbidden pieces of media I was exposed to, inevitably, because of public school or my more lenient cousins' homes. My first memory of being scared of a horror movie had a huge impact on my life. I still will never forget being that scared of something I saw on television.
No. Bitch, hang the phone up and star 69 his ass. Damn.
As an adult, though, it's easy to see why. Fear is such a big and depressing reality in the black community, and it's been used to control and oppress black people for years, centuries even. But in this video, and in the last 10 years or so, culturally, black people have been reclaiming space in the horror genre. Confronting your fears as a black person can be extremely liberating, especially in a controlled setting, like as a horror movie voyeur. So, in this video, we'll talk about how many black people avoid horror movies and how watching them can be a way to confront and overcome racialized challenges. I'll also recommend some of my favorites from the last few years and of all time that are worth looking into, so stick around for that. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. Throughout my life, I've noticed that many in the black community are culturally encouraged to avoid horror and all things spooky, pun intended, due to the association of blackness with so-called inherent evil. Society's view of blackness as bad and evil has led many black American families to embrace rigid religious practices, and this has led to a lack of exposure to horror movies, alternative cultures, or even just non-Western ways of thinking. While outsiders to our community may see that as deliberate ignorance, I see it as a trauma response. Fear is an unwavering reality, and unfortunately a tool used in the black community due to years of aggression toward us both internally and externally. Fear is used to self-police and to self-protect. Fear becomes a way to prepare and shield black people. While the intentions of most who utilize fear to protect are assumedly positive, it can also manifest itself in the negative in many ways, as it's a dangerous element, much like playing with fire. Examples of this includes our transatlantic slave trade influenced culture of controlling black children's bodies, stringent religious views, and mental imprisonment. Despite conscious choices, all of us, regardless of racial differences, are victims of puritanical tyranny. More specifically, mental imprisonment for black people is the weight of anti-blackness that unfortunately becomes internalized on some level. It's why black kids get made fun of for liking rock and roll, why black students get called Oreo for speaking in ways that the media and society told them that they were not expected to. It's why both black and non-black people have such limited expectations for themselves, others, and what they think blackness truly is. The warden inside the black mind is why the caged bird sings.
My belief is you never can leave home. You take it with you.
Everywhere you
go. So my past is my present.
And everything that's happened in your past is what makes you who you are right this moment.
This can lead to a lack of exposure and a reluctance to engage with many things, which ultimately includes the disinterest of horror. Another reluctance for black viewers is that there is a spiritual cost for many in the black community to engage with horror movies and alternative genres. Myself, I'm a proud black atheist. And we'll make a long-form video about that sometime soon. But as an ex-Christian, I am intimately aware that the black community is overwhelmingly religious and evangelical in their view, particularly in the Americas. Many church atmospheres prevent seemingly normal things like Halloween, Sailor Moon, and Pokemon cards. Because of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy's view of blackness, there's already a feeling of insidiousness when black people exist and engage. This reactionary resistance to all things evil is in some way, in my opinion, how some black people cope and prove their worthiness and goodness to white supremacy. They do not allow themselves or their children to engage in anything that could be potentially misconstrued as something nefarious because of biases and bigotry. However, people are already projecting those feelings. Because of this, horror horror was a complete taboo and remains such in many Black homes. Society's view of Blackness as bad and evil has led many Black American families to embrace rigidity and conformity in exchange for safety and consistency. Taking risks as a Black person equals surrendering to chance, which is a very frightening and brave decision to make. This can be something considerably small, like choosing to deviate from the Black norm or rejecting stereotypical Black values in a more overt way. As a tangent, this is why if you are non-Black and you're on the left, you see your Black friends sometimes giving someone they disagree with who is Black some sort of leniency. That's because they're acutely aware that this is a spiritual battle. But for me, horror explores so much more than what is just on the surface level aesthetically. It's not just gore, unholiness, or cortisol spiking jump scares. Horror explores and confronts what most people avoid head on: life, death, sex, love, ego, the mind, and the body. Horror provides a way for people to face things that they may not readily accept: their own mortality, their shadow selves, including feelings and actions they may not be willing to admit to. Horror allows us to control our fear, and eventually it becomes a personal dare, a provocation to face the worst parts of yourself, others, and our imperfect humanity through the lens of fear. Horror movies traditionally are not often consumed by the Black community because they can represent white naivete and exclusivity. They're often set in upper middle class suburbs with limited people of color, and the cast usually has the financial and social capital to risk themselves in dangerous and potentially deadly situations.
How come every time some scurry shit happen that we need to stick together, you white people always say, let's split up?
We should stick together.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We gonna die, y'all.
Now, real talk, as a Black kid from the projects with a neurodivergent brain, their ability to pay for a week-long vacation in college, mind you, with their best friends and having limited parental interactions always perplexed me. Didn't seem real. It's clear that most of these movies were not intended for me to be the target audience. The punchline is often, danger could never happen to us, but they mean it as white people, which of course misses the mark for Black and brown viewers. Even if there is a Black character, they often die early in the movie, and the audience doesn't have the chance to develop feelings or appreciation for their personality and humanity. In the universe of a horror movie, this equates to Black people and their bodies being disposable or only necessary if protecting or sacrificing for whiteness. Horror movies lack the social commentary and depth most of the time to address the experiences of people of color, and their feelings get gaslit, laughed at, or ignored altogether. These occurrences have happened so frequently that we can begin to categorize these things in confidence. The magical Negro is a Black character who possesses some level of supernatural powers and abilities, and uses them not to save themselves, but to ultimately help a white protagonist. This is often done at a large cost and sacrifice to them. Think Dick Halloran in The Shining, or John Coffey in Green Mile. This particular trope stands out to me as a Black disabled person who often gets propped up as an example of resilience and for empathy, i.e. being told that my autism and my EDS is a superpower despite my pain and cries for advocacy. Often only the comic relief, the secondary sassy Black friend or Black therapist is a Black character who provides emotional support solely for the white protagonist. We often don't know much about this character's own story, relationships, or fears. We see them through the context of a jester or a clown. Maureen in Scream 2 comes to mind, while an excellent satire of this, though, is through Brenda and Aunt Shaniqua in the Scary Movie franchise. I truly believe that all of these stereotypes have real-world consequences. I, firsthand, have been made into the Black therapist or the default sassy Black friend without my consent dozens of times at this point. Because of entertainment, white people begin to see Black people and seek them in their lives to serve in these roles, and don't seek to connect to us beyond what they envisioned as the main character in their life's movie. The sacrificial Negro is the most criticized character trope because, as I previously mentioned, the aloofness in which the storytellers kill off their Black characters makes our lives seem trivial in comparison to the heartfelt and long-winded deaths white characters often receive. It's not about the fact that the Black characters die, it's about how you kill them and how soon you do it. They are often killed off early in the movie as a jump scare to establish the danger and stakes of the horror scenario for the remaining white and non-Black cast members in the film. It almost feels like the directors are implying that this type of danger is implicit to the Black experience and should be immediately expected, which is why we are seen as disposable in these horror settings. Examples of this that leave fans angry to this day are Dwayne Jones's character in Night of the Living Dead and Keith David in The Thing.
What are you doing here? What do you mean? Well, I'm supposed to be the only black guy at this party. Oh, shit. Yeah, I know. It's whack. Hey, man, my bad, man. No doubt. Why don't you take this, man? Thanks. All right? Do you think? Hey. Yep. Peace out, brother. Hey, honest mistake. Just swear about it.
Most likely the earliest and most consistent trope of them all, the token black friend is a character who is only included in a movie for quota's sake and to engage in diversity, but purely on the surface level. Like an unassuming black kid on a college brochure, they don't have a significant role or impact on the plot and are used only for aesthetics and often don't even seem that closely connected or a part of the main character's friend group. I know, I can't be the only black person who notices how disjointed it all feels, even in the context of fantasy. Unfortunately, even with the renaissance of black horror, some filmmakers have missed the mark and tried to monetize on the cultural conversation without providing much more meaningful additional commentary. Two recent examples, in my opinion, are of Antebellum and Them. In Antebellum, the portrayal of slavery was inaccurate and also centered the story of white saviorism to placate the feelings of the audience. With Them, the violence against its black characters seemed visceral and unimaginative for shock value. It felt as if the violence against black bodies was using trauma as cheap entertainment. And in my honest and most humble opinion, we don't need more examples of black pain. We exist in a reality that is already a dystopian horror for black people. We do not need additional footage. To me, exploiting black pain and fear without providing the deeply nuanced context of art or race is more than just a misstep. It's as if the black horror movie for some out-of-touch studios became the replacement for the annual black civil rights or annual black slavery movie. Watching horror movies allowed me to control my fear and turn it into strength. By embracing what I was afraid of, I discovered a power within myself that I didn't know existed. And it's not just me. Fear is a healthy emotion, and it's okay to be afraid. In fact, it's normal to have phobias, insecurities, and panic in certain situations. But when we confront our fears in a controlled setting like a movie theater or at home, we can turn on our survival skills and animal instincts without the real-world consequences. For example, many survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse enjoy watching classics like The Audition or rape revenge grindhouse films, despite their guttural content, because it helps them live out and process the grief and anger of an assault. It gives them an intentional safe space to see bad men receive harsh punishments. In the same vein, it's important to find a balance between confronting our fears and knowing when to step back. There's no need to push yourself through a horror movie you are struggling to complete. It's not a contest. Toni Collette mentioned in a recent interview that during her filming of Hereditary, she finally realized as an actress that the body does not know the difference between a scene and real life. And with Hereditary, that makes total sense. With that being said, that can be a positive or a negative experience. Horror and fear can be used as a tool or a weapon in this way. It can be used as a way to discuss and confront deeper nuances and experiences that are often unheard. A recent positive example of this, despite the mixed reviews, was Ma. Through Ma, the story of bullying was approached with more specific nuance, as it told the story of an older black woman who grew up in a predominantly white area. While they probably did not intend for Ma to be consumed through this fact, it was one of the things I noticed and stuck to immediately. Her ostracization from others as a black, dark-skinned, and fat femme drove her to her breaking point, with reason. I don't condone black people doing bad things just because they're black, but there's something so liberating as a horror fan to have black anti-heroes and villains that allow you to empathize with them and question your own morality and understanding as a black person. For decades, fans have made cases for Patrick Bateman and Norman Bates, dissecting their childhood psychology and spreading their findings with others. Now, with a series like Swarm, black female villains receive the same level of analysis and backstory. Throughout history, blackness has been associated with fear and otherness, making it a natural but provocative fit for horror storytelling. From the disturbing use of blackface in early cinema, to the misinformed and bigoted portrayal of voodoo and African witchcraft in horror movies, blackness has been used to create a sense of unease and terror. However, Black horror has also been a powerful tool for reclaiming and redefining Blackness. By using horror tropes to explore themes of identity, trauma, and resilience, Black horror can be a means of empowerment and liberation. So, are you ready to explore some Black horror? Here are some recommendations that are horrifyingly chilling and have the perfect balance, in my opinion, of social commentary. While I'm sure you've seen it by now, Get Out explores the terrifying underbelly of racism and the dangers of the white liberal. Us tells a story of duality in the shadow self through a critique of capitalism and class war. Handyman delves into the horrors of urban legends, racial terrorism, and romanticism. Tales from the Hood presents horror through an anthology of social commentary, hip-hop culture, and campy energy. Ganja and Hess tells the story of a man bitten by a cursed ancient dagger, showcasing vampirism through addiction and religious conflict. The Spook Who Sat by the Door explores the idea of revolution, assimilation, and white fears of Black retaliation. For TV shows, I recommend Lovecraft Country, which blends cosmic horror with fighting oppression, while reclaiming and revamping Lovecraft's overt racist lineage with a majority Black cast. Editor's note: I wrote this script before the alleged heinous abuse perpetuated by Jonathan Majors. I'm the type of person who cannot separate the art from the artist, so I feel weird suggesting this as a TV show to watch, but honestly, this particular story is so compelling that it might be worth watching for you. I probably won't rewatch, however, with this information, which is devastating to me. But as a survivor of domestic violence, I am working on a deeply nuanced and political video about how oppressive systems mimic the relationship patterns of abusers. Until then, we can all just be disappointed together.
We were all rooting for you! How dare you! Learn something from this!
American Horror Story Coven explores the lives of Louisiana witches, cultural appropriation, and the nuanced conflicts amongst white and Black women. If you're a Black person who has never watched a horror movie, or if you've been told that horror is not for you, I encourage you to give it a try. Each of these movies and shows reviewed have received critical acclaim and have contributed to the growing subgenre of Black horror. And I also just love them. So, in conclusion, Black horror is a rich and complex genre that allows Black creators to explore themes of identity and trauma, as well as oppression through the lens of terror. By reclaiming and redefining Blackness in horror storytelling, we can challenge the tropes and stereotypes that have been used to oppress us and create new narratives that celebrate our resilience and strength. So go forth and let the devil out. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join me for more discussions about subculture, art, and activism in the future. Peace.